Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 7th of October 2013. So in today's news we only really have two things. The first one is the Darkmoon Faire and the new additions that they've made this time around, and then we have some blue tweets, which are pretty good, I guess. So, for the Darkmoon Faire, there's actually a new boss by the name of Moonfang. I'm not too sure where he spawns or anything like that, and I will try to get a video on that tomorrow, but pretty much he just gives you an extra 10 coins on your first kill, and he drops a few interesting vanity items. Now, the items are called Moon. This is a vanity pet. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. The special thing that it seems to do is it does this kind of like, I suppose, howl thing, then moonlight comes down and shines on it, so I suppose that's pretty, it's cool, I guess. So, yeah, there's that. Now, the next thing is called Moonfang's Paw. This is pretty cool. It pretty much just makes you look like Moonfang for 10 minutes with a 1 hour cooldown. That's fair enough. So, yeah, now the next thing is the Moonfang Shroud. What this does is it drapes Moonfang's pelt over your head, or your helmet, for, well, I don't really know how long for. It's not a consumable, so it lasts for ages, and it's pretty much, if you want to see roughly what it looks like, if you imagine the old hunter, I think it's Beastmaster or Beast something, Beaststalker's the one, or something like that. Hey, who am I to know? I'm only a hunter, right? So yeah, it's essentially just that. It looks quite nice. Now on to the final thing, we have the Shimmering Moonstone. This is probably the biggest change of any of them, and what it does is it summons and dismisses a rideable Moonfang, and the mount speed will change depending on your riding skill, so it's pretty much a mount. It's just a white wolf. So, yeah, not the most crazy of things, but hey, it's nice to see the Darkmoon Faire added to. Honestly, I think the Darkmoon Faire has just been an absolutely wasted opportunity. It's full of, like, it's got a few gimmick quests that nobody really cares about. I don't know really what the point of it is. It doesn't, I just don't think they've done a very good job of inserting it into the game in a way that's interesting, and that actually makes people want to go there. So yeah, there's the Darkmoon Faire. I think I've done it about 4 different times, you know, every month, and trying to get into it, but it just didn't feel interesting at all. Now, the next thing we have is blue tweets, and of course, being the start of the week and coming off a Sunday, there's not a giant amount of information or news to talk about. Hopefully this week we'll find out roughly what that hippogriff is. So, for the tweets, they said that on the topic of balancing healers, they said that meters are a really bad way of doing it, and sometimes the mechanics of a certain healer class will make it look way better, heals per second wise, when it probably is just about as useful as another healer spec. They were also talking about smart heals, with a poster saying that perhaps smart heals take away from the aspect of choice as a healer, and really, in healing, from what I understand, a lot of the fun it's about being mana efficient and doing as good a job as you can, keeping everyone alive, and then still having the mana to last the fight. And a lot of the spells which require decision making and thought, and really, skill. The people, they need to look at their healer bars or whatever, see who needs the most health, see the best way of doing things, and implement that in a mana efficient way. That's the interesting gameplay mechanic of healing. I think a problem with smart heals is it's just that you press a button, and then the heal's done in the most efficient way possible, sort of, and that's perhaps not the most interesting gameplay. It's just a button that you always want to press. It seems to be the problem. Now, Blizzard said they actually agreed with the person who criticised them for that, and they said that it is a very good design goal to emphasise choice, and they are trying to do that. So perhaps they've been toning back smart heals over the last while or something like that. Honestly, if they had, I wouldn't really know. And another thing, just on the topic of balancing, like with healing and tanks, the only thing with tanks, as long as they hold threat and their survivability is, I suppose, balanced, I guess, then the only thing to measure them by is DPS, and honestly, DPS is something that you can measure very easily with a meter. Healing, however, not something you can measure very easily on a meter. Here's an example. Half the raid could be standing in the fire just enough so they won't die, but the healer will be getting amazing parses. Crazy heals a second because they're forced to. And because of things like this, a healer's heals per second in some cases may only just reflect how good or bad their raid is. To give you an example, say Paragon, their most recent kill of 10 mana heroic Garrosh, they one-healed it. Now that one healer would have had probably crazy throughput, but if that was 3 healers or something that was considered to be a bit more normal, then they wouldn't have had as good throughput. It's just the way healers work. Honestly, as long as everyone lives, it's either they fail their job or they don't. And to try to boil this down into an arbitrary meter thing, it doesn't really work. kind of leads to a very bad argument. So yeah, that's that. The next thing on the Twitter list is that on the topic of tooltips, they agree that if a tooltip is so massive, really big and bloated and has loads of different things on it, then the ability's probably not that well thought out, and this is definitely true. A very important thing when designing abilities in games is that they are simple. Well, they're simple but with depth. So if they're used in combination with other abilities, they're interesting. But if you literally just have to read the text of an ability for a minute and then sit down and actually work out what it is, then it may not be the most intuitive and well-designed abilities. And one thing to know in game design is something needs to click with players, and reading through text and people just sort of not looking at the tooltip, understanding what it does, how they're going to integrate it into their rotation, and then they feel good because of that. If things are just a big wall of text and tooltips and, when you're in this form it does that, if you have this trinket, or, just loads of bloat, it's a problem. Now, there's not a giant amount of abilities with that, but I think there definitely are some, and perhaps they're ones that Blizzard will either be simplifying, or, well, should I use the dreaded word of streamline? Probably not, I get raged at. But perhaps Blizzard will be looking to just sort of move through a few things like that, and see if they can iron those issues out. I know that if you were talking specifically just the size of the tooltip, then there's some different abilities which have a slightly different effect in PvP for balance reasons. Stuff like that should be kept, obviously, because when Blizzard try to make an ability have the exact same effect in PvE and PvP, what it means is the balance of one is to the detriment of the other. Therefore, I think it's good that for some things like Colossal Smash or Stampede, that they actually do have different effects in a player versus player and a player versus environment sort of scenario. Now next, they said that the profession window could be less bad, and this is absolutely true. Honestly, if you want to do full-on professions to make a crap ton of money in this game, you're not going to be using the standard profession window, and if you are, then it's probably one of the least efficient ways that you could do so. It's really bad. It's bad. When you look at other things like KTQ, Little Sparky's Workshop, they had so much more nice functionality. You could build lists of items and just lots of useful things that cut down on the random clicking and bloat and lack of fun the professions have had. Honestly, I find the professions, especially Miss Pandaria, and really the whole way through, have just been very clunky, I suppose. And this is just a thing that probably could just be inherent to MMOs, because I've never really found one that has a very streamlined system when it comes to that. So there's that. They also said that account-wide professions are possibly going to be a thing that they want to hear more player feedback on. Basically, they don't like the idea of people making alts to get around the limit, and it's not really fun gameplay. I suppose that the people who are big into doing lots of professions are probably not the ones who are big into doing lots of alts, or at least, some people aren't, and that pretty much means that they're just forced to level alts for the sake of getting 2 more profession slots. It's not really interesting. That said, having one character be able to do every single profession, I don't know how I feel about that. I guess that's probably one for you lot to work out amongst yourself in the comments. So that's it for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.